Ragnarök. What does that mean? Well, the Ragna part is the easiest in a sense because it means of the gods. Regen is the gods. We actually see this word already in Proto-Norse and Ragena, that is its earlier form. And what does this come from? Interestingly, it kind of looks like words for ruler elsewhere in Indo-European. And I've been tempted to say that in the past myself, but remember that a G in a Germanic language is not a G in other languages because of Grimm's law. A G in other Indo-European languages is going to be a K in a Germanic language like English or Old Norse. And I'll come back to that because that has something to do with Ragnarok, but not with this word. This word probably has something to do with a word for speech that also shows up kind of vestigially elsewhere in the language, elsewhere in other Indo-European languages. Welsh, hregi, curse, Latin, rako, roar. Actually, an Old Church Slavic word, roku, for speech that becomes Russian rok, meaning doom or fate, like what's pronounced for you. It's kind of cool. So it's probably the ones that speak, even maybe a little bit like in the development in that Russian word, the ones that speak your fate. Now, the second element in Ragnarok is two different versions. In most of the poems of the Poetic Edda, it's spelled as in such a way that we read it as Ragnarök. That AU combined vowel spells what we usually spell in the standardized languages as Okaudata. That is actually the word that is related to that ruler word, that Latin rex, regis, that Celtic rex, that Sanskrit raj. And a really good parallel formation to rock in Old Norse is Sanskrit raji, which is like a streak. And I think that the course that a life has taken is a good basic meaning for rock in Old Norse. We see that in Alvismal, for example, where Thor is buttering up the dwarf Alvis and telling him he knows about everyone's rock, the course of all lives. And of course, if you're wise in Old Norse, you always know the future, you always know fates and things like that. So Ragnarök is then the course of the gods' lives, and especially its end. Ragnarökkur, which is what Snorri Sturluson calls it in the Prose Edda, and what the poem Lokasenna calls it in the Poetic Edda, is actually darkness of the gods, or specifically the twilight darkness of the gods. And of course, this has influenced the way this word is often translated in English and in German, Götterdämmerung. This is an old Indo-European word for darkness that we see in Gothic as requis, typical word for darkness in Gothic, closer related language, and also in more distantly related languages. For example, in Greek, this is erebos. You very often get B's out of quas in Greek, quas and guas. And erebos, of course, is the darkness of the underworld, right? Whether of the dead or of the underworld deities. So that's kind of cool. So it's when the gods go down to darkness. It's when the gods go dark, when their sky goes dark. And so both Ragnarökkur, darkness of the gods, darkening of the skies of the gods, and Ragnarök, the course of the gods' lives, the end of the course of the gods' lives, make perfect sense. And it's very difficult to know which, if either, is the earlier or more original term. Well, thank you folks for your support on Patreon and such. Thanks for checking out my translations from the original Old Norse, such as the second edition of the Poetic Edda. And I've got a lot of other videos about Ragnarok on this channel if you want to check them out. For now, from beautiful Colorado, I'm wishing you all the best.